18th.
Governor Landry could soon sign a bill that would make Louisiana the first state to require public school displays, the Ten Commandments. It
passed the Senate last week in a 30-8 vote. Our Whitney Miller breaks down what opposing lawmakers say would be legal challenges.
It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I believe we're likely going to lose in court.
State Senator Royce Duplessis says it's only a matter of time before someone sues the state if the Ten Commandment bill, HB 71, gets signed into law.
But that's why we have a separation of church and state. We learned the Ten Commandments. We went to Sunday school. And as I said on the Senate floor, if you want your kids to learn the Ten Commandments, you can take them to church.
In a 30-8 vote Thursday, the Senate passed the bill that would require public universities and K-12 schools to display the commandments in every classroom. It would make Louisiana the first state to do so.
I hope and I pray that Louisiana is the first state to allow moral code to be placed back in the classrooms.
Representative Dodie Horton authored the bill and defended it by saying the commandments are the basis of all laws in Louisiana.
It was always on the wall. I learned there was a God, and I knew to honor him and his laws.
But those who oppose say the bill violates the First Amendment, which prohibits the government from establishing religion.
I learned about Islam at Holy Cross Catholic School. I learned about the tenets of Judaism at Holy Cross School.
Is Holy Cross a public school?
What's that?
Is Holy Cross a public school?
It's not.
We know that not every child celebrates or that the Ten Commandments is part of their faith, and we shouldn't isolate or make any kid feel like their faith doesn't matter.
Duplessis believes if signed, the state will eat up resources defending the new law.
You don't have to be a constitutional scholar to see that this is problematic and it flies in the face of the First Amendment.
In New Orleans, Whitney Miller, WWL, Louisiana.
In the 2023 legislative session, the bill's author successfully passed a bill making Louisiana the first state to require classrooms to display the U.S. motto, "In God We Trust." Mayor Cantrell's temporary restraining order against a citizen who snapped her photograph is now becoming a full-fledged court battle. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Sharice Gibson.
And I'm Katie Moore. Civil court took up the matter today, and Mike Pearlstein was there for the fireworks.
He's joining us now in studio to explain how Cantrell is seeing the tables turned against her. This is all going against her, right, Mike?
Well, that's right, Sharice, Katie. Filing protective orders are usually routine matters, except when you're the mayor, and especially except when the person you're filing against goes on the offensive.
There's something more here, and I think we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Ann Bro admits snapping these photographs on April 7th of Mayor Cantrell sitting on the balcony of a French Quarter restaurant with her then NOPD bodyguard, Jeffrey Vappy. The pictures later sparked an internal investigation against Vappy and led to him being removed from the mayor's security detail. When Cantrell countered last week by filing this protective order claiming harassment, it was Bro who turned around and now claims the mayor is harassing an ordinary citizen with false statements and violations of her rights.
It's created a whole firestorm of really an invasion of privacy of Ms. Bro, and so that's what we really want to investigate.
In her counterclaim, Bro states that Cantrell is falsely accusing her of harassment and taking other pictures, even video, to, quote, attack and dehumanize her. Bro stated she did nothing like that, and she includes this image of where she shot the pictures while sitting on her own balcony in the Pontalba apartments. Beyond that, Bro's attorney Justin Schmidt says he would like to know how the mayor obtained his client's social security number and an old driver's license photo, information usually available only to law enforcement officers.
There were some documents attached and some statements within the petition that led us to believe that the mayor, there might have been a little inside baseball there, and that the mayor was privy to some documents that a regular citizen couldn't have access to.
Veteran attorney Craig Mordock says Cantrell may have some explaining to do.
It raises a lot of questions as to how she got that information, and the mayor is going to have to testify under oath how she got that information.
Now, Katie and Sharice, the mayor's explanation could come as early as June 18th, the next court date in this dispute after today's hearing was continued. And while Cantrell wasn't available today, we did get a written statement from City Hall that reads, in part, the City of New Orleans reaffirms its original statement that Mayor Cantrell, like every citizen, has the fundamental right to safety and the ability to take necessary legal steps to protect herself and her family.
Okay.
Maggie, have you
Great stuff.
seen this before?
I have never seen this before. Be in a trial where Donald Trump is the defendant and the witness is the person who is drawing this kind of outrage from the judge is not what I expected, because we had been looking for Trump to be the person acting up in ways the judge would find upsetting, and he has a few times, but not like this. But it was not entirely surprising, because anybody who has dealt with Bob Costello knows that he can be a wild card, and this is why a lot of people in Trump's world thought calling him was a risk. And we got to see what a risk it was, because this all took place in front of the, except for that bit at the end, but the objections all took place in front of the jury. The parts of cross that took place today by the prosecutors were not great for Costello. And so Michael Cohen, who is a key witness in this case, has gotten pretty roughed up by the defense, by Todd Blanche in particular, or specifically, I should say. And
I mean, today he said he stole from the organization.
yeah, and that was a key moment, and in some ways was more significant than what happened last week, which was a pretty dramatic moment. But to then go into closing with what Mershon clearly thought was a sideshow, and he made that clear when he was talking about whether to even let Costello testify to certain things, have Costello behave this way, and then just sort of have Costello reinforce part of what prosecutors are arguing here, which is that there is a sort of mobby aspect to this case and to a lot of the behavior by the Trump people. It just doesn't seem to help the defense.
Please.
It's like as if Fox News jumped out of the television and into the courthouse today, and that's been the risk all along of bringing in a character like like Bob Costello. He is someone who obviously thrills the right with the way that he attacks Michael Cohen's character. I'm sure he thrilled Donald Trump with his testimony last week in front of the House committee, but in a courthouse, that is not the tone and the demeanor. I mean, we talk all the time about how Judge Mershon is a very soft-spoken judge. He does not yell at people. He does not raise his voice. And the general conduct of counsel, prosecution and defense, is even-toned and measured, even when they are making objections. So for something like that to unfold in this courthouse, it's a sideshow, to say the least.
Let Judge, I mean, what do you make of how the judge handled this?
Well, you know, my first comment would be just another day at the office for Judge Mershon. I mean, I can't even imagine. I would levitate out of my seat if I had a witness who is a lawyer, an officer of the court, and knows better than to talk over me and, you know, give me the eye when he's sitting there. I think he handled it perfectly to warn him that he was going to hold him in contempt. You know, the greater question is, from a tactical standpoint, why they called this witness. And jurors tend, and I've said this before, to sort of cleave to the judge. The judge is their protector, the person who greets them, sends them off at the end of the day. They don't like when a judge gets walked on by a lawyer or, in this case, a witness. It leaves a really bad sensation, a bad taste in their mouth. And you know, to your point about stealing from Trump, that got washed over by this witness. You know, there was a moment, and they took that moment away by calling this witness.
With all due respect, Your Honor, and I don't mean to talk over you.
No, not at all.
You know, I'm the defense attorney. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Michael Cohen admitted to grand larceny. Grand larceny. He admitted that to the prosecutors within the statute of limitations. But do you hear any charges against him? He is so in their pocket, they're so indebted to him that they didn't even charge him with a very simple crime. He admitted to the crime. He admitted it to them. It's an instant.
Arthur, I don't disagree with you. That's a moment in the case. My question is, why you then you don't rest?
Costello gives a counter narrative. Costello, look, I wasn't in the courtroom. You guys were.
I don't know what that narrative is.
And I will tell you this, Judge. When I am a defense attorney and I'm calling witnesses, and now after the jury's watched the judge go, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And now I go up and I ask the questions, objection sustained, objection sustained, objection sustained. You know what I look at the jury, I go, they want this hushed up. They want this hushed up. They don't want you to know this.
That wasn't how the jury was looking at it in the courtroom, just to make that point.
Let's talk about the substance of Costello's testimony, and let's talk about Costello. Anybody remember the Mueller report? He's actually a big figure. Maggie and I were just talking about this. The exchanges between him and Cohen are, according to Robert Mueller, a dangling of a pardon from Donald Trump.
Right. He was allegedly sort of the emissary from Trump world to Cohen to dangle.
Exactly. And that's what you're going to hear in the cross-examination tomorrow to add to this atmosphere of mafioso, stinking, corrupt relationship between Donald Trump and Michael Cohen.
For the record, Costello's Irish. So I know you're talking around mafioso and a guy named Costello. For the record, he's Irish.
Oh,
so
I didn't.
make that very clear. I'm a little sensitive to that word.
I meant
past president of the Italian American Lawyers.
A generic organized crime.
Can I just make a point, though, to Arthur's point? It is true. They called him because he tells a counter narrative, and he tells a different version of a story than what Michael Cohen does, with similar facts. He tells a version which is actually, it was Michael Cohen reaching out to me, and there's a more extensive version. But that wasn't the caveat, we don't know what the jury thinks, and we need to say that over and over again. At least in the courtroom, that wasn't what came through because he was stepping on himself. It wasn't just the objections. At one point, Susan Hoffinger, the prosecutor who was doing the cross-examination of him, was asking a question, and he spat out, "Speak into the mic." And the jurors, two of them looked at each other when he did that. So I don't know how much of that counter narrative came through. I understand what you're saying. I think the client was very happy, but I think what the defendant is happy with and what the rest of his team is happy with is not always the same thing. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree with that.
And one other point that I would just make in terms of what the judge said about how Judge Merchan handled it, I think that Merchan has actually been bending over backwards to be fair to the defense. The defense cannot stand him, and that's very clear in everything. I think that with a lot of things he has done, he has tried not to be in confrontation with Donald Trump. How you justify kicking out the press and keeping in Donald Trump supporters when you say clear the courtroom, I don't quite know how that works.
And the judge was also, even before Costello took the stand, he expressed some concern for the defense that this was not a wise course of action. He basically was like, are you sure you want to go down this cul-de-sac of, this pressure campaign allegedly that Michael Cohen said he was subject to? He tried to warn them, and they didn't listen, and they put him on the stand anyway, and now we will see what the result will be.
And the other moment that I noticed today was with the clip from C-SPAN, that there was an inability apparently to stipulate, and then they stipulated later they thought better of it, which you'd get at sidebar and say, are you kidding me that you won't stipulate to this? And I understand it's a death cage match, and nobody wants to stipulate to anything at that point, but I'm not sure that that's a good tactic to do, and maybe that's what the former president wants.
Let's talk about the Michael Cohen stealing from the Trump organization. I mean, how important is that?
Well, I think it is, it gives the defense the opportunity to say he's not just a liar, but he's a thief. So you double up. It is important, and it's going to come out in closing arguments, and they'll lean heavily into it. I just don't know whether the jury doesn't have baked into the narrative already, this is a bad guy, and they're not particularly surprised about it. From my perspective, I don't know that it's as severe as it was made out to be in the moment today.
Prosecutors were aware of it.
I would agree with that because, just being in the courtroom, I felt like there was a little bit of a dichotomy between people who were in the room and outside of the room. And I was in overflow, but I was hearing the arguments as they were happening. The gist of the story was both bad for Michael Cohen and also bad for Trump, because at the end of the day, the story was essentially that that Michael Cohen got a company to pay for Trump to do better in some stupid poll that no one cared about, and Trump didn't want to pay the company, and that Michael Cohen eventually gave them $20,000 in cash, and then took the money that the Trump organization repaid him. Bad for Michael Cohen, but also the sort of between the lines part of it is that Trump probably would not have paid them at all.
Yeah, but how about this part of it?
So that doesn't make Trump
their
look good
whole
on either.
theory has been, and we've covered it for 4 weeks, Trump is so careful with his money. He knows where every dollar goes. He signs every check. The Tiffany frame, $650. All of a sudden, 30 grand disappeared, and he didn't know that.
I agree with you on that, and I think that I was surprised that the defense didn't actually double down on that, because you're totally right that it's not actually clear whether Trump knew Michael Cohen was actually paying that company. And the defense never really went down that road to say, well, if Trump is so careful, why didn't he know about this $50,000 and where it went?
It is worth remembering, the prosecution did mention this in his direct testimony. So this was not a hidden bomb, a bombshell. The other thing is, cooperating witnesses often do terrible things. And they get passes all the time. I mean, isn't that right, Arthur? I mean,
Jeffrey, listen, I just need to say this for my own peace of mind. If Donald Trump is sitting in that seat, if Barack Obama was sitting in that seat, or Joe Schmo is sitting in that seat, whoever it is, I don't care what party you're a member of, if I am the district attorney, the way I was raised in the law, you do not bring the very first case ever against the President of the United States under these facts and circumstances where your main witness is someone as flawed as Michael Cohen. If I brought this case to Joe Hines, the Brooklyn DA, in 1995, he would have said, Artie, we're not going for it. I'm sorry.
I also just do think that, yes, they did. The prosecutors did mention this. They didn't exactly signpost it, so it's still read like something as a surprise. And also the Keith Schiller text last week that got introduced that were Todd Blanche's big sort of pseudo Perry Mason moment. I don't know why the prosecution didn't bring that out in the first place, too. There have been a number of missteps by the prosecutors.
Well, it seemed like the prosecution missed that. I mean, it seems
well,
like
I don't
missed that, I think, completely.
They may indeed have missed it, but it's not because they didn't have them.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
Everyone, thank you.
Well, today, the criminal trial of Donald Trump continues as the defense resumes questioning of its first witness, Robert Costello. His behavior during yesterday's testimony led the judge to clear the courtroom and threatened to remove him. Robert Costa is outside of the courthouse in New York City. Robert, good morning.
Great to be with you. It was a convulsive day in court yesterday with explosive moments between the judge and a defense witness. Closing arguments now set to begin a week from today.
The prosecution rested its case on Monday as the defense continued to question the credibility of key witness Michael Cohen. During cross-examination, Donald Trump's former fixer testified that in 2017, the Trump Organization owed a technology company $50,000 and that he paid them about $20,000, but kept the rest. Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche asked, "So you stole from the Trump Organization?" Cohen responded, "Yes, sir." Cohen says he took the money after his 2016 holiday bonus was slashed and called it self-help.
It may matter a lot to some juror, and it may matter not at all to others. Michael Cohen is such a proven liar that why would it surprise us that he's also a thief?
In the afternoon, things became heated when the defense called attorney Robert Costello, who claims he once legally advised Cohen and discussed the Stormy Daniels payment with him. Costello testified Cohen told him in 2018, after an FBI raid on Cohen's home and office, that Trump knew nothing about those payments, that he did this on his own, adding Cohen said, "I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump." Throughout his testimony, Costello clashed with Judge Juan Merchan, repeatedly speaking over the judge's rulings and audibly reacting. An angry Merchan told the witness, "If you don't like my ruling, you don't give me side-eye and you don't roll your eyes." Then asked Costello, "Are you staring me down right now?" And in a dramatic moment, the judge cleared the courtroom to reprimand the witness, threatening to remove Costello from the stand if he stares him down again.
Making a decision to put on a defense case in and of itself is a risk for the defense. But putting on a witness as potentially vulnerable and explosive as Robert Costello made the risk go up by a huge margin.
And late yesterday, Trump's lawyers moved once again to dismiss this case. Sources close to Trump's legal team tell me it's unlikely at this point that Trump testifies. They believe it would be too much of a high-wire act for Trump to take the witness stand with little upside.
So another motion to dismiss the case. I know this is kind of part of Trump's lawyers' kind of typical strategy, but every time that happens, there's a bit of a delay. How does this impact the timeline of the trial?
It could lead the judge to spend a few days considering that motion. Sometimes the judge takes hours, sometimes he takes more than that. At this point, closing arguments are set to begin next Tuesday, but all of this is fluid. It looks like Robert Costello is going to wrap up his testimony today. It doesn't look like the defense team's going to call anyone else, though, again, that remains fluid. It looks like Trump's unlikely to testify. And so things could start to wrap up today. The court is usually off on Wednesday. The looming question right now, scheduling-wise, is whether the court is in session on Thursday. Then, of course, you have the Memorial Day weekend. The court is scheduled to be off Friday and Monday.
Why did the defense call Robert Costello to the stand?
Bob Costello is someone I've covered for a long time. He's close to Rudy Giuliani. He's been friendly with people in Trump world for a long time. And you see in Bob Costello someone who had interactions with Michael Cohen at key intervals in this entire endeavor. And they said at multiple times that in his testimony that Michael Cohen is someone who, someone was yelling at me. Michael Cohen is someone, hey, it's Lower Manhattan. You go with the flow here.
Exactly.
But you see in Bob Costello someone who has been interacting with Michael Cohen at key moments, and he, to the defense's point, said that he believes that Michael Cohen never told him Trump was implicated in the hush money payments, and so that's why he was brought forward as a witness.
Robert, cool as a cucumber in Lower Manhattan.
Really?
Thank you.
The prosecution resting its case in Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial after 4 days of testimony from the former president's one-time fixer, Michael Cohen. The defense now calling their second and likely final witness to the stand, lawyer Bob Costello, who, according to Cohen, offered to represent him in April of 2018 after the FBI raided his hotel and office. The defense attempting to use Costello's account to refute Cohen's testimony about a pressure campaign. Well, once the defense rests, both sides will get a chance to present closing arguments. The judge telling the defense and prosecution to be prepared for next Tuesday. Let's bring in our Olivia Rubin. She's just outside court. Also joined by our senior reporter, Catherine Falders, and also Tim Jansen, criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. All right, Olivia, let's start with what just happened moments ago. We heard there was some commotion in the courtroom. The judge booted all the reporters out of the courtroom and handled some business between him, Bob Costello, and then let reporters back in. What happened? What's the deal?
He did, Kira, a remarkable moment inside of that courtroom and going on week 6 of this trial, something we have not seen before. The judge taking serious issue with the conduct from Bob Costello, who sort of was muttering under his breath repeatedly as multiple objections about his testimony from prosecutors were being sustained. You could hear him saying into the microphone the words ridiculous, the words geez. He let out a deep sigh when Judge Merchan sustained another objection, so much so that Merchan kicked the jury out of the room and issued a strong rebuke against Costello, saying, when you are in my courtroom, you don't roll your eyes at me, you don't give me side eye, you don't strike your own testimony from the record. These are my own rulings. And Costello appeared to agree. And you would think, Kira, that would have been the end of it. And just as Merchan was going to get the jury back, Costello was still looking at him. And you heard Merchan say, "Are you staring me down?" And it was truly remarkable, Kira. A furious Merchan said, "Clear the courtroom." And all of the press was brought out. Donald Trump, of course, stayed. And it was off the record. We could not hear what he said. But you'd have to think he admonished Costello when the proceedings resumed. Hardly anyone was speaking, but then it picked back up. So really, again, I have said it, but it really was a remarkable moment, something we don't